Former directors of James Hardie have won an appeal against a court ruling that they breached their duty of care. In 2009, a New South Wales Supreme Court judge found 10 former James Hardie executives and directors, including former chairman Meredith Hallikar, approved a media release claiming a compensation fund set up to provide funds for asbestos victims was fully funded when it was not. Reporter George Roberts is outside the Supreme Court. So, George, how did this decision come about?
Well, Ros, today's decision is part of a complicated court case relating to a decision made by the Supreme Court last year and relating to events dating back to 2001. Now, last year, the New South Wales Supreme Court Justice Ian Gazelle found that the company James Hardie, some of its employees and some of its directors were guilty of breaching the Corporations Act and breaching their duty of care when they released a statement to the stock market that said that they were setting up a compensation kitty for victims of asbestos-related diseases and that compensation fund was fully funded. It was later found out that the fund had a $1.8 billion black hole. Now, there have been 10 defendants in this case, and today the full bench of the Supreme Court of New South Wales has found that some of those defendants, 7 non-executive directors of the company, their appeal has been upheld. And the reason for that, Chief Justice Spiegelman gave the reason for that being that ASIC had failed to prove that they had approved the decision to release that statement to the stock market. And one of the reasons he gave for that was that the ASIC had failed to call a key witness. So those 7 non-executive directors have had their appeal upheld, but one executive director and also a lawyer for the company, as well as the company itself, have not had their appeals fully upheld.
And George, what's been the reaction amongst the victims of asbestos-related diseases to the ruling?
Well, the widow of one of the foremost campaigners for victims of asbestos-related diseases, Bernie Banton, his widow earlier on spoke to the ABC outside court, and here's what she had to say.
Well, they'll certainly be having a better Christmas than the families that have lost a loved one and the ones that are facing death, who are actually probably praying not to see Christmas because they're suffering so much. It's just disappointing as far as asbestos disease sufferers go.
So, George, what does the result mean for the former directors of James Hardie who were involved in the appeal?
Well, for the 7 non-executive directors who've had their appeal upheld, it means that ASIC is now forced to pay their court costs and they'll be allowed back into the boardroom. Had the original decision been upheld or had today's appeal been quashed, those 7 directors were facing bans for running companies in Australia, but that's now no longer the case. The chief financial operator or former chief financial operator for the company, his appeal has only been partly upheld and some of his case has been held over to February of next year, so he'll have to come back to court, and the same situation goes for a former lawyer for the company as well, whose appeal has not been fully upheld. The company itself has not had any of its appeal upheld, so it has still been found in breach of the Corporations Act and also in breach of its duty of care for that statement that was released to the stock exchange.
George, thank you.